Students of Reddit, what is something your teacher did that really pissed off the whole class? Story 1. The head teacher of my high school tried to expel me for having an epileptic seizure in front of him. He said I was a danger and distraction to other pupils and was disrupting his school. I ended up being kept out of school for 2 months while my parents fought my case. In that time, almost all of the rest of the teaching staff, who were furious with this decision, kept me supplied with work and even provided one-on-one tutoring when needed. This was in a rural area where the next nearest school was 40 miles away, so we had no other school choice. Story 2. At my university, my professor did not tell us the time of our examination, despite numerous emails from 20 or so students, as well as the head professor of the course. This exam could have been any time from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and I lived 90 minutes from campus and relied on crap public transportation to get into university. It got to 9 p.m. the day before the exam. No one knew when the exam would be, and if we missed it, we would fail the whole module. So I took the train to the city where my university is and booked a cheap shanty hotel room for the night, just to make sure I was there on time. We all took the exam at 12 p.m. after getting an email an hour before it was held, so I wouldn't have made it in time if I'd stayed home. The worst part was that no one cared, not the professor, the course leader, or the head of our school. They all just left 30 students in the lurch, allowing them to potentially fail the exam and therefore the module. Story 3. In my second semester of my first year of law school, everyone in my class, 80 plus people, had to take a research class. This class was taught by 4 different law librarians but followed the same syllabus. It was also worth 1 credit. These librarians ran the class as if it were 3 credits. We had to read, conduct legal research, and write 2 memos throughout the semester when we had 5 other classes, all within the 2 to 4 credit range, plus 1 specific class that was notoriously difficult. Anyway, halfway through the semester, my class gets pissed at the workload to credit ratio, and someone starts a petition to reduce the number of assignments and/or change the grading for the class from a letter grade to a pass or fail. Almost the entire class signs. There are a few holdouts. The student who started the petition delivers it to the librarians. The librarians remove 1 or 2 assignments, but otherwise disregard the petition. Those who signed awkwardly suffered through the rest of the semester. Story 4. He would act like he was enlightened and say shit like, "Video games rot your brain. All your free time should be spent on education, as that is all that matters." But then during the lessons, he would go completely off topic and start talking about random shit. Apparently, he is making a board game that could compete with chess because he's just that brilliant. Story 5. I had a college professor who was teaching a history course to a bunch of education majors in their junior year. She would ask us questions all the time about things she hadn't yet lectured on, and then pull the, "Really? No one knows the answer to this? Well, I guess we'll just wait for someone to answer." We were all education majors. We knew that trick. We waited her out every single time. She always broke first. People keep asking, "What's the trick?" This was a poorly executed attempt at using the Socratic method. It's better to have students arrive at an answer themselves than it is to tell them. However, you first have to create an environment of trust and respect so that students are comfortable enough to risk giving the wrong answer. And you have to be willing to provide a little bit of scaffolding should no one know. This professor did neither of those things. Story 6. It was the last period of the day and the music teacher was subbing our science class. He was sitting at the computer and we were all getting work done. Towards the end of the period, our homeroom teacher comes into the classroom and exclaims, "It's the end of the day. Why are you all not packed up?" To which the music teacher replied, "I told them and they refused to." Excuse you? He hadn't said a thing to us. So we all protested. Even so, our homeroom teacher told us off for being disobedient as the music teacher slithered out of the room and we had to stay 10 minutes late as punishment. Story 7. The class was doing a project on criminal justice and held a mock trial. My friend got assigned to play the role of a sexual assault victim. In real life, she had been the victim of an assault that was very similar to that of the character. She felt it would be too emotionally draining and tried to get out of it. The teacher wanted an explanation, but my friend kept saying it was very personal. This went back and forth a few times over the next 2 days, and it was just not clicking in the teacher's head. Finally, he lost his patience and yelled out, "You're holding up this whole project for everyone. Why the hell is this so difficult for you?" With the whole class paying attention, she admitted she had been sexually assaulted the same way this character had and went to go and cry. They changed the topic of the project after that, but the class never really looked at the teacher the same way again. Story 8. Instead of teaching from the book, our teacher spent weeks teaching us the shin lever method of learning about natural science. On test day, he gave us the tests that came with the teacher's version of the book. So we'd never even covered the information on the test. We all scored very poorly, but learned to ignore him in class and study the book on our own. Story 9. My German teacher would make you retake spelling tests until you got 100%. Once you did, you could sit and do whatever you liked until the whole class got 100%. This caused a lot of pressure on everyone and used to belittle the students who didn't pass the first or second time. If you were the only one left, he would stand over you and watch you struggle. One test day, I decided to bunk off and I got caught. I burst into tears and explained how horrible this teacher was and that I was never going back into his class. I was moved into a higher level German class with an amazing teacher, and my German improved. Story 10. When I was 10, I had a teacher who hated our entire class. I had a dentist appointment one day and got into class at 11 a.m. Our break was 11:15 to 11:30. Apparently, for the first 2 hours of the day, our class was so bad that everyone had to be kept inside during break. I not being there for the first 2 hours was allowed out, meaning I was the only kid in the playground from my class that break time. It was the most powerful yet loneliest feeling. Story 11. This math teacher had a reputation for being a hard ass and giving a lot of spontaneous tests. He played up one specific revision test, which was right before midterm or final, I think, as being a really big deal where the result would reflect whether you have any potential in the subject, and the usual dramatic spiel. After we did them, he went on holiday and took the tests with him to correct. The effer forgot to bring them back, and nobody ever got their result. Another bonus, this same teacher had a double period before a double period of gym, and sometimes, 10 minutes before the bell went, he'd just say, "We haven't covered enough, so instead of gym, you'll have another double period of math now." Story 12. There was a teacher at my old university who just happened to be the father of one of my closest friends. I was very confused in the beginning when everyone hated him because, to me, he seemed like a nice guy. I find out later that he takes pride in failing his students and will actively fail anyone he feels isn't interested or putting in enough effort. One of my favorite professors said it best. If half your students fail your class, you have failed as an educator for half those students. Story 13. One time as the bell rang to go to next class, I stood up and immediately passed out. This was not really a big deal for me in high school. I had some medical stuff going on and it happened a lot, so I was pretty used to it. So anyway, I came to about a minute or two later and my teacher was freaking out. I assured her everything was fine, but she wouldn't let me leave to go to my next class. She called the nurse, who was aware of my condition, down, and as soon as she got there, the nurse told her I was fine and free to go. Because of all this, I was about 5 or 6 minutes late to class. Still got written up. Story 14. My high school got t-shirt uniforms when we got a new principal under the guise that we were too poor to afford our own clothes and it would keep intruders out, without even polling students. I was very vocal about being against them, but wore it anyway to avoid trouble. My reward was that if I wore a jacket, I was singled out by security and had to unzip it. Keep in mind that dozens of students wore hoodies and were not approached, or I was told I looked unfamiliar and had to go to the office so they could verify my identity. It's a small town and everyone knew me since I was also in the student body government. I would pass by the principal in the hallway and he would pretend not to know me until I magically unzipped my jacket. But the cherry on top was when the office called every single teacher every day to check if I had the uniform on. The harassment became too much for me and I withdrew from my senior year of high school before the first semester ended. Luckily, I was able to take 2 online classes at home to graduate. I couldn't think of a bigger distraction than making a huge fuss over uniforms or what a student is wearing.